You know the story of Thanksgiving. You know the Pilgrims landed in Plymouth Rock in 1620. You know about the Mayflower Compact, about the harsh winter where half the colony perished, about the feast with the Wampanoag tribe. You know about the turkey, the corn, and the fellowship. Yes, that's the story you know. But now, for the rest of this story. The Pilgrims weren't merely celebrating food or survival or even friendship. Their very first Thanksgiving was not in November 1621. It was December 1620, when they stepped off the Mayflower onto frozen ground and fell to their knees not because they had a feast, but because they had freedom. They had fled persecution in England, jailed, fined, hunted, because they dared to worship God as the Bible taught, not as kings commanded. And when they arrived, battered by storms, weak from sickness, and uncertain of the future, they gave thanks anyway. The feast that followed a year later with the Native Americans was not just about abundance. It was about providence. It was about the God who had spared them, sustained them, and brought them allies in a new and uncertain land. But here's what you might not know. Thanksgiving didn't become an official national holiday until more than 2 centuries later, when America itself was torn apart by civil war. It was 1863. The nation was bleeding, brother fighting brother, and yet President Abraham Lincoln, urged on by the persistence of a woman named Sarah Josepha Hale, issued a proclamation that the last Thursday of November be set aside as a national day of thanksgiving and praise to our beneficent Father who dwelleth in the heavens. Think of that. At the darkest hour of the nation's history, Lincoln called the people not to despair, but to gratitude. He knew what the Pilgrims had known, that Thanksgiving is not about perfect circumstances, but about trusting a perfect God. And so the first Thanksgiving wasn't about the turkey. It wasn't about pumpkin pie. It wasn't even about survival. It was and still is about gratitude. Gratitude for freedom, for providence, for faith, and for the God who blesses his people in every season. It reminds me of what the Apostle Paul tells us in the book of 1 Thessalonians, when he says, "In everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you." Thanksgiving is more than a holiday. It's a heritage. From Pilgrims in Plymouth to Lincoln in the midst of war, our nation has been called to pause, reflect, and give thanks. Gratitude doesn't erase hardship, but it transforms it. This Thanksgiving, may we join that same unbroken chain of voices, lifting thanks not only for blessings seen, but for the faithful God who walks with us through every trial. And now that you know the rest of this story, you have a story to tell.